Welcome to Bon Mots, where we'll be applying the Manzer or Mosi-Thurlow scale of quantitative analysis of pop culture narrative through a binary system.
Or Mots! This podcast contains spoilers, mature content, and language. Viewer discretion advised.
Hello, and welcome back to the Lost Signals with our review of The Shape of Water. I'm Jonathan Ian Manser, here with Rich Perry.
How you doing?
And Scott Thurlow.
And I'm a fish lover.
Yeah, you certainly are. So, Rich, would you like to start us off with a funny logline?
Hey, you fish fucker. Are you in need of assistance?
A great reference there.
She was.
No, I think she got a whole handle on her own.
She gave the assistance and then got some assistance, if you will, in regards to that very quote. Sure.
Those pipes were cleaned.
Yeah, exactly.
Another good one. All right, Scott, would you like to start off with the plot structure?
Sure. So this is the new Guillermo del Toro joint, and it's sort of like, in his same vein, it's a sort of magical realism, modern fairy tale fable, if you will, and it takes place in early 1960s, I would gather, during the Cold War, on a secret government facility where a mute cleaning woman and her best friend are cleaning up the facility, and early on they happen to they are shipped in a fantastical fish monster creature. It sort of looks like an updated version of the creature from the Black Lagoon. And Eliza is the main character's name, played by Sally Hawkins, I believe. And she very quickly sort of forms a connection because she's sort of lonely herself. She lives a sort of pretty sparse life, not real other contact. Like I said, her best friend, played by Octavia Spencer, is basically her only friend. Not only, and her next door, like, sort of older artist neighbor. So she forms a sort of connection with the fish creature who is being abused for testing and so forth by the scientist, and specifically Michael Shannon, who plays a sort of like you've seen this character before, like the gruff government guy in charge, and he's like taken over. So she eventually concocts a plan to smuggle the fish creature out of the facility, and is aided by Michael Storr, who plays a Russian sort of like double agent. He's ostensibly an American scientist, but actually he's working for Russia and trying to also get intel and so forth and get the creature if they can, or eliminate it to prevent the Americans.
He was Russian. It was his American Science was his cover.
Yeah.
So,
You're right. He's pretending to be American sized, but is actually a Russian agent. So anyway, so they concoct a plan and smuggle the creature out, and during that time, when it's living in Eliza's apartment, they form an actual sort of romantic relationship, hence the fish fucking reference. And it's all very sort of endearing and earnest. And then, of course, Michael Shannon attempts to track it down because he needs to save face in front of his government superiors, the generals and so forth. So he's trying to figure out like how it was smuggled out, like how it was able to sneak past all the security in the lab. He figures out eventually that in fact the scientist is a Russian agent, and through that lead tracks them down. And at that very moment, I'll just call him Amphibian Man, I guess pretty much what he's credited as, is shot by Michael Shannon. Although then he quickly recovers because he apparently has healing abilities, and he sweeps Eliza off her feet literally and into the ocean, and they escape as right after the fish creature slices his throat, thus having a pretty happy ending given all the stuff that they've gone through before. So overall, I'm probably going to give it a 3. I thought it was very well paced. Again, like, Guillermo knows what he's doing, right? So it's going to be hard for him to fuck up a film. And this one, especially, I think one of you had mentioned just previously before cast that sort of shows him maturing a bit as a director, as a storyteller. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have any complaints or anything. Maybe you guys can point out some nitpicks, and maybe I'll point out some later to specific questions. But the overall plot, I'm going to give a very strong 3. I thought it was very well done. I enjoyed it throughout. Never was there a dull moment. And like I said, it crept along, or not crept, it kept itself along at the pace it needed to be, and I was satisfied throughout.
So, I'm a fan of Guillermo del Toro. Prior to this movie, Pan's Labyrinth was perhaps my favorite work that he's done. I enjoyed the Hellboy films, but this is definitely a mature version of what he's done prior.
It's more grounded, I guess I would say.
Well, that's the thing is, it's weird to say grounded with Guillermo del Toro because it's all magical realism. This is partly a Americana movie. It's partly a kind of French post-war kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
Partly, there's this very strange but fitting like musical scene and dance number.
Well, it was a
in this.
callback to other stuff that happened earlier, which was very seamlessly integrated. I'll agree.
So it has his usual dreamlike sequence, but it's the story he's telling and the way he's telling it is, in a sense, like somewhere between a Disney film and the original source material for Disney films.
I see what you mean.
It's not necessarily like as dark as a grim fairy tale is, but it's nowhere near as lighthearted and childish as Disney films tend to be.
Yep.
It's an adult fairy tale for the modern age, and I think it works very, very well.
I pretty much agree.
Yeah, you guys pretty much said it all. I have nothing to add to that, except that I'm giving it a 3.
I agree with the 3. If I'm going to nitpick something, I think that a couple of the secondary characters have full arcs in this movie where it's the kind of detract, I think, from the main story they're telling.
I somewhat see what you mean, but I'm going to nitpick like secondary themselves when we get to it, so I'll speak more about it at length. But I
feel like
I see what you mean.
I feel like their arcs were possible because of what Eliza was going through. Like it kind of, her arc kind of bled out into theirs and like gave them an opportunity to.
She's she's like the center of it and sort of like reaches out to them. I see what you mean.
For instance, Giles' early scenes in the diner weren't 100% necessary for the overall film, and they could have been cut out and replaced with dialogue of how he is like lonely. I understand why they're in the film, and it creates a larger,
it builds
more
his
robust character.
Yeah.
But again, like if those are nitpicks overall, and I'm still going to give it a 3.
Yeah,
well,
damn strong 3, I think.
All right, Rich, on to you with themes.
Themes. Love is a powerful thing.
Love is blind.
Yeah.
And a fish.
Yeah.
Go on.
Like you have that, and I think pretty much just finding your place. Because you have Eliza, as well as Giles. You have even Michael Shannon, actually.
A bit, yeah, to an extent, for sure.
To an extent, are like looking for their place, and like they're all like trying to find that one thing that really, I guess,
they can sort of attach to, in a sense,
and like kind of like helps, like, would kind of help them fulfill or come up with a version of themselves that they can. Was it like you have Michael Shannon trying to just defining himself by his job,
exactly.
And like his mission, and like trying to make himself whole with that. You have Eliza who finds herself becoming whole after meeting the amphibian man, and you have Giles who finds himself becoming whole through Eliza, just because she's able to find somebody that truly understands her, and it gives him hope that he's going to do the same. You
also have Dimitri.
Oh yes, Dimitri,
literally 2 separate lives, and it's interesting that he has the patriotic Russian angle, but he's also a scientist first and foremost. So his being tugged to those 2 worlds,
and like as soon as he sees Eliza interacting with the amphibian man, like you see, like he gets so much hope.
Yeah, he decides that like it's the route that he like you said, he first and foremost wants to save he doesn't want to have the amphibian man like dissected and so forth.
He wants to study it and learn from it, and
right, but he doesn't want to destroy it. He doesn't want to see it destroyed.
Well, and the Russians want him to destroy it. The Americans want to destroy it because they're American, I suppose.
No, well, they want to beat the Russians in the space race,
and the Russians want to destroy it because
they don't want the Americans.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the only one saying, "Hey, let's this is a beautiful, intelligent creature. Let's preserve
not
it."
Destroy it.
That isn't one of that's in a power position, I suppose.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I know you have one E, so I'm not going to steal that from you, but I think what you said, Rich, is pretty obviously in the film, and I think it addresses it pretty well. Like we said, it's a modern day fairy tale in a sense, but more mature, like you said, E. It's not like Disneyfied in the way it might have been before. So I think it addresses all that, and I know, like I said, I know you have one, so I'll let you speak upon that, and then I'll build after that point, E. Because the one you mentioned to us off-cast.
There's multiple levels of themes that work really well in this story, and which is why I particularly love the how it handled its different layers. So yeah, it has the love angles, it has the identity angles, but it also has, in a sense, a commentary upon, and this actually kind of does go with the identity thing, Michael Shannon's character exists is Americana.
Yes.
All right, so to give an example from the film, character Giles is an artist who worked in advertising for a while. So he has this contract to make a ad for Jell-O. And it's supposed to be like green Jell-O with a happy family around it. And later on in the film, Michael Shannon's at home with his wife with the same,
Exactly.
a
bowl of green Jell-O. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the form though, like the cake style form of it.
Yep.
And he's supposed it's the idea of like the illusion and the failings of happiness being the American dream that was sold in the 50s. That Michael Shannon, by all accounts, is that all American.
He has all the
male
trappings of that.
Yeah,
He's severely unfulfilled with
absolutely.
any of it.
Exactly.
And I think it's almost a Tim Burton theme here.
Well,
Because Tim Burton's always going on about how, like, normalcy doesn't define happiness and doesn't define what should be the standard for, like, what happiness would be. This goes into it not quite as, I would say, stylized. Like, Tim Burton kind of is kind of a very dark version of it. This is dark in a different way, where it just shows the bitter unhappiness of the American dream versus these people who find happiness in alternative lifestyles. And I think that that's very neat. And also, especially in this day and age with kind of the resurgence of neo-McCarthyism, you have the Russian spy being one of the most moral characters in this work.
Sure.
And you see the Russian bureaucracy being awful. You see the American bureaucracy
They're just as bad as each other. Yeah.
But there's spiteful team players, and the humanity is lost to them. So, I mean, there's a lot of, it's a neat onion of themes.
No, I agree. And like I said, I just saved that one for you because I know you brought it up, Cass, and I didn't actually think of it during the film, or I didn't notice it as much, but I think you're absolutely correct. And it sort of, again, intertwined itself with all the things that Rich had mentioned. And I think the film does a very good job of sort of balancing them all and having them all weave, and as represented by a number of characters. So I'm going to give themes a 1. Damn solid 1.
So I'm on to antagonist. Michael Shannon is a Norman Rockwell painting of Gaston from Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, that's an amazing description, yes.
And that's one of the problems.
Kind of. I see what you mean.
He's not a one-dimensional character, but he's somewhere between that and two dimensions.
Meticulously checks off all the boxes of an antagonist.
Yes,
he
exactly.
does. And how complex the rest of this film is, Michael Shannon does a good job, don't get me wrong, but the character is just a stock villain in certain respect.
I would counter to that.
All right.
Go ahead.
Because the movie kind of sets itself up as a story that Giles is telling to somebody. So I have a feeling that the reason that he's so meticulously crafted to be evil is because that's how he's portraying him in this version of the retelling.
That's interesting. I was going to save some of the stuff for style, but I think it's going to bleed over through. So yeah, the thing is, I think we're all pretty big fans of Michael Shannon. He's a good actor, does a good job. The issue I had was, I described it as such after the movie, that he's playing the same fucking dude that you saw in Boardwalk Empire and other things like it. Not to say he doesn't do a good job, because he does, but he's almost like a card-carrying villain, more or less. But I mean, that's an interesting angle, that because it's framed through Giles as reminiscing about what happened, maybe, but the thing is, what the film shows us is him being basically stuck, I'm going to shock this creature. It's an affront and not, abomination, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to creepily, and menace, Eliza and the other.
Don't forget the light racism.
Yeah, exactly. And that too, that was there as well. So yeah, he's like you said, he checks off all the boxes of being an asshole government villain, but not to say he doesn't do a good job. So this is the one I was wavering on. I think we all were. So I'm not sure. I'm still kind of undecided, but maybe it's a stronger case for a 1 because of that framework, but I'm not sure. So if you got anything else to rejoin me with?
I'm going to punish this film here because of the quality of everything around it. If protagonist, and there's an argument to be made over characters being stereotyped
caricatures and so forth. Yeah.
Getting the same kind of roles.
Yes.
We'll get to that in
Typecast.
Typecast, that's it. We'll get to that in sporting. But here's the thing. Everything around this film is so complex. And yes, I could potentially see the whole thing about being an unreliable narrator informing the villain. But I'm just... Like, if this was a more mediocre film, I would give the antagonist a 1. But because it's such a good film, I'm going to give it a 0.
I may lean on that side. Like, yeah, I do like that angle of like framework through Giles is, again, like he's telling you essentially the fable of the story. But like I said, what we see in the film, and again, not to disparage Shannon's performance because he did a good job. It's just that he's so kind of cookie cutter for that kind of villain, at least his actions and so forth, and what he does in the film, in the story. So I don't know, it might be like a soft 0. Like, it's harsh because I want to give this film a lot of credit, but I think you might have convinced me on that point, E, where you said because everything else around it is so strong that this is one of the weaker points. And again, I could have been convinced either way, probably, but I think I'm going to come down with a soft to default 0 for this, in this case.
I'm going to stick with a 1.
Yeah, that's fair.
Now we're on to protagonist with Scott.
Yeah, so Eliza, Sally Hawkins, I believe, is her name. I think she did a pretty phenomenal job, especially given that she can't talk, so she plays a mute cleaner, so she speaks she communicates through sign language, but just her body language was amazing. There's some great standout scenes where she's sort of like reenacting. There's also a style, but for example, her and Giles watch a lot of like older films. There's one like tap dancing, and she tap dances through the hallway out of her apartment and things like that.
I love the scene with them on the couch.
Yeah.
Doing the whole
the little,
two-person bit.
Feet thing. Yeah, that was really good. But I think she does a pretty incredible job of just expressing so much through like no spoken lines at all.
Especially when she gets really worked up and you can tell that she's extremely frustrated.
Yeah, she's exasperated. She's trying to express herself. Now, to be fair, there is like a dreamish sequence where she does sing and speak, but that is not happening per se in the plot.
But because it's her inner monologue.
Yeah.
And when it comes back to reality, and it's her signing, or the frustration of trying to express what she only has in her dream state is absolutely...
Yes, it's pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah.
For sure. And also, like, again, this is sort of a new barometer that I start to measure protagonists with. She has very smart plan and she makes smart decisions. She figures out how to smuggle.
It's so smart that they think it was 10 highly trained agents that performed this.
Yeah. The government baddie, Michael Shannon, immediately jumps to the conclusion that it must have been like a little team of the Red Armies infiltrating his fucking base somehow, but really it was like 2 cleaners and a turncoat, or like a spy scientist, sure, but just one, and he's a scientist first and foremost, not a trained soldier and so forth. So yeah, like I think she deserves definitely a nod for Best Actress for a portrayal.
Unfortunately, she's probably going to lose to Meryl Streep.
Yeah, well, that's unfair, but whatever. But I'm just saying, I'm going to reverse on one. And you might make an argument for Doug Jones as Amphibian Man to be a protagonist, but not really. Like, he
doesn't do too much.
He's like Beauty and the Beast, but the Beast couldn't really talk. The Beast was more Beast-like. And probably Giles is the most important side character, but not quite protagonist.
No, she's definitely the sole protagonist.
Yeah, so even if disregarding anything else, and just having it parsed down to her, it's a very strong one. She did an incredible job, and I was pretty impressed with her performance.
Absolutely.
Anything else there?
One.
Okay,
Rich, on to supporting characters.
So they had some really solid supporting characters in this movie. Like you had Zelda, her friend, the other cleaning lady,
Eliza's best friend.
Yeah. You had Giles, of course, her artist best friend, or her artist neighbor friend. And I loved how well-rounded they were. Instead of just like, because they could have, for all intents and purposes, just had them be tools that she uses to help her get Amphibian Man out of the...
Well, they were, but they were more than that as well.
No, he did spend a quality amount of time developing almost every character in this work.
Because and what I loved about it, because like them helping her was not just them like, hey, I need help. Like they had to come around to it.
Sure.
And the only reason, the only reason that they did is because they saw how much love she had for this. Because, what did Giles say? Like something along the lines of she didn't explain to him how much she loved this creature. He not only would have not have helped her, but he'd
probably
wouldn't have been as cool with like meeting him.
Yeah. Sure. So like here's my nitpick, and I was waiting for this question to say this. It started with Octavia. Like she always, like a la Michael Shannon, she's a very good actress for sure. Absolutely. She always does a good job. But again, I felt as if, at least, let's say for the first third or so of the film, that I felt her character was a little flat, like a little, again, too cliche, too sort of typecast. Like, you know, her sassy older friend who works with her and is like covering for her at work. Okay. But I didn't feel as if she was as rounded as she eventually came to be. So it took a little time for that to get through. Mm-hmm. So like, for me, like, but eventually I came around to it. I just was like, at first I was like iffy, like, I wish they were doing more with her. And they did, the film does give her more to do and rounds her out eventually. But like I said, it took a little while to get to that, so I was a little slow to give it credit. But I will, of course, give Michael Stover credit. Sorry to mispronounce his name. He also was in Boardwalk Empire, if I recall correctly. But yeah, he's a pretty...
Dimitri.
Yeah, he's a pretty damn good job. And I think he was probably my favorite side character. But certainly Giles was important as well. And like, kind of the same thing, but to a lesser degree for Zelda, that, yeah, he was there and like you got like the broad framework of his life, but at least then it started fleshing it out more. Like you saw him interacting with Eliza more, and that relationship was more fleshed out, and you saw more like of how they interact with each other and what their existence is like, what their lives are like. So yeah, it's all damn solid. So it's going to be a solid one. It's just that at first I was a little iffy about it, but eventually, and especially towards the end, the film brought me back and enough credit to give all the supporting cast they want. Is anybody we're leaving out? I don't think so.
No, there's Pie Guy.
Yeah, Pie Guy, I guess. Like,
and the Amphibian Man.
Yeah, the General. Yeah, well, I was going to go for him for style, but Doug Jones as the Amphibian Man did a great job. Again, in fact, it's funny because I guess now we think about it, he had even less to work with to express himself, but still it was very, you could tell what emotions he was supposed to be, going through and portraying on screen. So.
You guys covered it all. I'm giving it a 1.
Yeah. Solid 1. Solid to strong 1 for me.
Okay, I'm on to dialogue. So I'm going to talk about the not dialogue. This was an impressive work, as we've mentioned prior, to the fact that the protagonist and her love interest both can't speak. So this is a romance, and it's sold entirely on action and
body language, essentially.
A little bit of something, but he doesn't speak sign language, or his...
Well, he speaks very little.
There's like 3 words or something.
But for them to characterize a romance between a human female and a male amphibian person, it's like, that's impressive that they pulled that off.
Agreed.
It shouldn't work on paper, but it does. And I study linguistics. I enjoyed her teaching him the little bit of sign language that he picks it up quite quickly, but still to the limit of communication. I don't know, like, overall, the non-dialogue gives the dialogue a 1 for me, but you guys can talk about the actual dialogue. I
mean, I agree that was a strong point of the film, and you're right, it's pretty impressive that it was able to convey such an emotionally engaging story without essentially spoken lines. But I thought all the other stuff, the characters who were able to speak did a fine job. I didn't enjoy the interactions between Dimitri and his two Russian handlers.
The call and response passwords.
Yeah, like the little password thing, like the reading under the bridge, and the eagle has landed, like essentially, like basically a play on that. That was pretty fine. And yes, Shannon's interactions with his family, I thought were like okay, and him and the other scientist guy that he like basically coerces or like commandeers his car from at the end to track down Amphibian Man and Eliza. Like, all that was fine. I never did I think a line was out of place or cringeworthy or anything like that. It was all very natural. It all made sense. And towards the end, I did like sort of seeing Michael Shannon's character like break down more and more. Like, he's trying to like psych himself up to the mirror, like shit like that. That was all fine. But you're right. Like, basically on the strength of having a romance love interaction between two characters who literally cannot speak, was pretty damn strong. So that might bleed over again to style, which we'll speak about, but I'm definitely giving dialogue in all forms and quotes, a strong 1.
Same here.
All right, Scott, it's on to you with style.
All right, nice. This is probably one of the strongest points of this film because it's Guillermo. You sort of, if you know him, you know what you're in for. And I guess the broad things I will say, there's some of the shots, the lighting was motherfucking incredible. And the way he you brought something up, you brought Tim Burton up earlier. I believe so. Like, yeah, this almost sort of not was a one-to-one ratio or anything. I'm saying, but it's kind of Edward Scissorhandsy, in which like an outcast sort of monster thing falls in love with a normal human, but it's not. With more subtleties to it, with little bit like differences. So, but yeah, like the underwater stuff. Like I said, like the way that some of it seemed a bit noirish at times, but also like fantastical. Like, for example, the opening shot of the apartment was framed in such a way that it seemed like was a weird, bizarre, like old lady in the shoe house, almost like the way that the apartments are next to each other and like the super long hallway. At least it appears long, like endless almost the way it's shot. And just everything about it, the rain, things like that. And I guess, I think we should count the look and design of the Amphibian Man himself, or at least as the suit put on by Doug Jones was quite good. It looked.
I wonder how much of that was CG.
I think like maybe half and half, maybe like I think his eyes and stuff like that. But the suit itself probably was practical.
Because like the way that the fins popped up.
Yeah.
Well, if I can remember correctly, I think Guillermo del Toro works quite a bit in practical effects.
He does. He's a big fan of like puppetry and things like that. So yeah, like, I'm just saying in general, like it's just. I mean, I would be surprised if Guillermo did a bad job with his style in his film, and this is probably one of the most striking ones that I've seen.
So I just want to bring up something quickly that we brought up Tim Burton and Guillermo del Toro. While Tim Burton's back in his heyday, he had very hyper stylized versions of like Edward Scissorhands was like a stylized version of the 90s. Yeah. Kind of suburbia, California suburbia.
You're right.
This Guillermo del Toro loves his like post-war architecture and styles. Granted, this did take place at that point, but yeah, so it has that hyper stylized feel of that. If you've seen a Guillermo del Toro film, you recognize his style immediately in this. But that's not a detraction because I think, again, this is a more matured version of what we've seen prior to that.
No, I absolutely agree. Like, yeah, you're right. Like, if you've seen his style once, it's pretty like unmistakable. Yeah. But he's certainly, I would use the word master of knowing what he's doing. And yeah, it's almost like surrealist, like hyper realized. Like for example, when Shannon buys a car, he buys a caddy, and like the color of it, and like just the way it looks, and the salesman on the revolving thing. Again, it's almost like a satire of Americana, like you were saying. So
this is another great scene I was going to bring up that I thought was really funny. It was a one-off joke. They don't bring it up ever, but there's a fat guy sitting with a cake right at the beginning with a slice cut out, and it's just like it's there. And never mentioned again, has no point but it's just his kind of
balloons behind him too.
Yeah.
No, you're right. And actually, that reminds me of something that you brought off cast. I guess I want to use the word gags, but for example, in the lab, there's a sign that says "loose lips might sink ships," which is applicable to Eliza's character and the water like angle, like the amphibian angle. And it was like I think you said there was the signs like "conserve water," or the whole film. No, they're just wasting water the whole time.
Oh, water is a big stylistic factor here.
It's a motif.
Rain flooding a bathroom in order to have sex. All sorts of use of Michael Shannon constantly with his little glass of water and painkillers.
Yep. All those little details and stuff like that as well added to the larger style as well.
But I also say, I guess I'll take care of soundtrack. The soundtrack is phenomenal. It was very period of a lot of the great romantic tunes and longing tunes of that era played, and just overall stylistically, Guillermo del Toro is. I don't want to say he's at his prime because I hope I have yet to see more. Prime.
Yeah, but it's certainly a step up. Yeah, we'll say. Yeah, I agree. Probably one of the strongest ones to give it.
Anyone else?
Yeah, one.
And Rich, on to you with the recommendation.
Yes. I loved this movie.
He's nodding vigorously.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm at a loss for words.
I am not, but I mean, I wouldn't say I love this film. I think it was a very good film. It might not make my favorite films of the year, but I can see why it's getting the praise it does. And yes, it was very good. I also recommend it. It's just that it's not as high as other films I've seen, but no knock against this at all. Shape Order is damn good. You definitely should see it. And like I said, like you said, I hope it does sort of mark a new and better direction, if not better, just a more mature and step up and more things like it from him in the future. But yeah, Shape of Water is certainly a goddamn well put together film, and most people would enjoy it, I think.
I enjoyed it. Coming out of it, I felt very heavy. And I think that's what the intention of this work was, to give me like that kind of feeling.
Sure.
I will also say that we went to one of those nice upgraded theaters with the reclining seats and all that.
Surrounding circumstances.
And the couple next to me really enjoyed this film because they were going at it pretty vigorously with me sitting in the seat directly next to them.
If only you were wearing a fish suit.
And because of the reclining thing, it almost felt like I was lying in bed with a couple going at it, which made me feel gave me one of that heaviness feelings that this thing said. But overall...
they were just enjoying the romantic angle of the film, and you just caught McFucking Crossfire, it seems.
So, yes. So I recommend it, but I also recommend, finding seats away from amorous couples. So...
That has nothing to do with the film itself, but it is what happened in our scenario.
Really sorry. Can someone talk while I do the math?
Sure. I was saying, Ian's doing the math right now. I'm pretty sure I gave it a 9. You guys might have given it a 10.
I gave it a 10.
Rich gave it a 10 probably,
well.
and he's given a 9. So yeah, like I said, it's definitely worth a watch. It's almost certainly going to be an Oscar film, which is why we saw it. It's almost like a lock to be.
I really hope she gets that nod for Best Actress.
And I think I agree. I think she should.
Absolutely, she said. Okay, so I do have a question for you, though.
Okay.
Before this one. Dunkirk versus this movie for Best Director, or Guillermo del Toro for Best Director?
That's a good question.
Because it's likely between those two.
I give slight edge to Guillermo. At least, sort of like, and I'm kind of voting with my feelings there, but I still think Dunkirk was a well-done directed war movie, but the visuals of Shape of Water, I think, surpass just because of the nature of it.
It's so close to me because they're both masters of their craft, making movies that they enjoy doing. And so, Rich, do you have an opinion of that? Did you see Dunkirk?
Yeah, I saw it with you guys.
Yeah,
why do you guys keep forgetting I went to these movies with you?
I didn't forget. That was him
and Steve-O.
Steve-O was not here, forgot that Rich was on a different film. I did not forget.
Twice in one night.
But,
no, I think Guillermo edges it out for me.
Oh, cool.
I pretty much agree with that. It's close, but I think because of the nature, because the style, the stylization, if you will, of this film, it's more visually appealing.
Yes. All right. So it's 9, 9, 10, giving it a 9.33, repeating overall.
I think that's goddamn about right. Yeah, it's super solid. It's well worth a watch, and you'll enjoy it. And maybe you can take a date and make out and annoy someone else in Ian's position during this film.
All right. Well, I'm Jonathan Emanzer with Rich Perry.
Conserve water.
Scott.
Conserve water. Fuck a fish. See you next time. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Scott Thurler. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.